Hey, Alejandro, thanks for joining us today. As well, you getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks for having me on today. Longtime listener of your podcast. So I've been in enterprise sales pretty much the entirety of my career, over 15 years now. Started in inside sales, worked my way up to an account manager role, and then an individual contributor, where I've been for an extensive amount of time now. I really started in enterprise search, information retrieval, analytics, and now sort of what's been talked about as big data, and today working at a truly amazing company, Databricks. I've been here for just over 2 years, where we are a data AI company in the cloud. So been doing this quite a while. Yeah.
The English degree, was that because there was just interest, or was it your skill or your?
I didn't do too well in economics as a freshman in college, and just really sort of fell in love with my English lit class freshman year.
Yeah.
And had some professors that were really influential, and just pursued creative writing, poetry as my path in college.
And was there thinking about what to use it for, or was it because English is typically a teaching major, isn't it?
It is. I during my college years, I was really interested in commercial real estate and development, and I spent my summers working with a property developer in the Boston area, and that's sort of what I thought I was going to be pursuing. And coming out of college, at that time, the commercial real estate market was not doing well. I couldn't get a job. It was very difficult to get a job. And so I got my real estate license and went to the local Coldwell Banker office and became a residential real estate agent, selling properties, selling the most valuable personal asset people buy. And that was the beginning of my professional sales career.
And did you like that? Because that's pure commission, it's highly competitive, it's relationship based, it's word of mouth.
There are many aspects that I really enjoyed about selling residential real estate. There were other aspects that, as a 20-something-year-old, guy out of college was not necessarily my favorite. But what happened was I befriended two other agents in the office. These two other women, both of their husbands were presidents of software companies. And so quickly our lunches as we were touring properties turned into dinner and drinks with their husbands, and I became friendly with their husbands. And both of their husbands actually sort of said, "Hey, you're outselling our wives all the time. Why don't you come work for us? We'll give you a base salary and a 401k and benefits and perks." And so I said, "Sure." So I took a leap and went to one of the companies as an inside sales business development rep, and that wasn't exactly the right fit. So pretty quickly I called the other friend who ultimately became a professional mentor of mine, and he brought me in, interviewed at his company. They put me through the ringer, no special treatment, and that's where I really started inside sales in enterprise search.
And did it feel a whole lot better? Because I still think B2B sales is the last real bastion of the middle class. Unlimited income, but the downside is not that bad.
Yeah. I think at the time I was just thrilled to have, a professional job, with a poetry major, poetry degree, and with my initial dreams of commercial development sort of falling by the wayside. And then I was really intrigued by the seasoned veterans in the sales organization. These were guys who and women who, they had nice watches, they had cool suits, they drove nice cars. I was a little bit, taken by the success that one could have. And then the global travel. We were a Norwegian company. by origin, and I was in the US headquarters in Boston. And so I would hear about all of the international travel. And again, at the time, bachelor, starting out, I was wide eyed by all that came with that side of it.
Yeah, because from the outside, we look at um, corporate work as like drones, boring,
Totally.
cubicles, do what you're told, go home, kind of this, expressionless face, beaten to death. And it's not that way. It doesn't have to be that way.
No, and I think what I liked about residential real estate was the freedom, right? It was
Yeah.
my schedule, my ability, and while I start in inside sales and starting out, you got to be in the office. There was that sense of you make of it what you make of it. You get as much out as you put in. So I very quickly was first in the office, last to leave. I would entice my colleagues, product managers, with takeout pizza and beer to stay late with me and work on the demos and work on my pitch. And that type of freedom within, I guess a corporate environment was really exciting and natural for me. Um, yeah, the punch a clock 9 to 5 is never something I could envision. And I've always found a career in sales and B2B sales. I have traveled extensively for client meetings and conferences and everything. And the 9 to 5 just doesn't register for me. I just don't live that way.
Yeah. Because you want to do something you have passion for, something that you're emotionally
Absolutely.
connected, you can dig into.
Yeah. It sounds trite a little bit, but when I was young, there was another, at the head of global sales operations, and we would see each other on Friday mornings early as we were both coming in. And he would say, if you're not dreaming to live, go home, right? If you're not living the dream, you're dreaming to live. So you might as well go home. And I was like, yeah, like this is fun. Like it's a grind and it's hard and you got to put the work in, but I find it really fun when you're grooving. There's nothing better.
And what about that? Because you can get that in other things, or can you?
I don't know. I've done this my whole
That's
career.
all you've done.
I've never tried being an accountant. I don't think anyone would take me up on that. But I feed off of working with my customers and building a personal relationship, just the same as I did helping my clients find a house, right? And you got to build that personal relationship. And people talk about building a champion and building an advocate, and understanding what's important to my customers. So I really believe in the empathetic sale, right? And how do you put yourself in your buyers, your clients' position in their shoes, and understand what are their driving factors, whether it be corporate initiatives or their business unit goals or a particular project that this individual's been charged with. How do you enable that and be highly customer obsessed in terms of thinking about everything through the lens of what do I need to do to make this customer successful, which is a very different lens than how do I close a deal,
Yes.
right? How do I close a deal is self-centered. It's inward looking, and you can break glass and you can hurt people along the way. You might get your deal, but when you get a callback, we get a referral, and I really believe in being very customer oriented, very service oriented. And I believe that's allowed me to have people throughout my career pick up the phone, make a referral to someone else in the industry. They're going to a conference and say, you got to call Alejandro and learn about what he's doing there, right? That's happened a couple of times for me. Or salespeople, we transition from one company to the next hot company. And how do you pick up the phone and call those old relationships? And if you're just there to close a deal and you haven't shown empathy to your client, that you're probably not going to get people picking up the phone. I had someone just message me on LinkedIn today. They're changing jobs and they want to connect.
Well, I think the realtor So I've had friends do the move it the other way,
Hmm.
go from like inside sales to realtor because of the freedom, the independence, and 100% control over your income instead of
Yeah.
50%. But it is a complex sale, even though
Hmm.
it's not business to business. There's a lot of those elements, but you have to get financing. There's usually more than one person involved in the decision, family typically, and high risk,
Yep.
time gaps between communications.
Very emotional sale, real
Yeah.
estate. Very emotional sale. And sometimes the emotions get the better of the buyer sometimes, or the
Absolutely.
seller,
Right.
right? That could kill a transaction. And in the B2B world, maybe you frame emotional sale to politics, corporate politics, right? There's organizations that go all in with a particular vendor, right? Whether it be a Microsoft or Oracle, AWS these days, right? And so how do you help an organization, maybe break free from that, or you're competing with another vendor, obviously, and there's that contingency on the buyer side that is pro your competition, and you have your contingency, and how do you break through that? And you have to arm and enable your champions to break through that political or emotional discussion with their team members internally, right? Very much so that you can solidify the buying team.
So I got to take it every one of your deals is competitive, new deals.
Uh, Not always.
Yeah.
Today, Databricks sort of it plays in an ecosystem where we have a lot of partnerships that are very strong in the ecosystem, but also those partners do have competitive offerings. And candidly, it just closed, largest deal in my career where there wasn't there was competition, and that competition was build it yourself.
Yeah.
So we're going to roll our own. And so sometimes that's viewed as, oh, there's no competition, but it is competitive, right?
Of
Because you
course.
have those folks who do want to build. Yeah.
Yeah. Or do nothing or
Right. Or do nothing is a competitive. Absolutely. Do nothing. Hey, so how do you overcome that, the competition of not maybe having budget or not having enough executive support or alignment?
well, I mean, you've had a lot of success. What do you attribute it to?
Uh, I think it's about being customer obsessed and being empathetic. But when I think about the deals and how those sales cycles were executed that resulted in, that continuous development of my biggest deal of my career at that time, and then surpassing that, I really look at it as, building a champion that's truly going to advocate and sell on your behalf when you're not in the room. I attribute it to building relationships with my team. It absolutely, there's no salesperson that can say they did it on their own. It takes a village, especially in a complex, solution oriented B2B sale. You have your pre sales resources, you have your product managers, you have, inside sales development, all the team players. I deal that we just did, we had 30 people that touched that deal from executive on down.
Yeah.
How do you rally your internal organization to your cause, right? How do you do things in a way that follows the process of the organization, that clearly communicates, why are we doing this, why are we going after this sales campaign, what is the strategy, what are the roles of all the team members, and enabling and trusting your team to play their role, right? Football analogy, right? The quarterback, if he doesn't trust that wide receiver, probably not going to be a lot of passes, or those passes could have a little too much zip on it because they're trying too hard. You've got to build that trust internally and building the relationships. And again, the champion back over to the customer. How
Well,
do you?
let's
Yeah,
dig
yeah,
into that. What characteristics do you look for in a champion and how do you develop them?
yeah. Um, I look for someone who has enough authority to get things done. So a manager, a director may not, it depends on the organization, how it's structured, but you got to certainly look at, senior director, a VP, an SVP. A champion also is going to understand, the details of the initiative and the project, certainly the details of the technology without, getting lost in it, but also the internal workings of their organization, and has access to power to bring that executive in, at the right times. So identify the right level of person. Also, someone who's personally vested in this project's success. If this person is not really, if this project doesn't make or break anything for them, what's their motivation to support you, right? They can say, "Oh yeah, we'll be in that meeting, we'll help you out," but they're not going to like champion things when you're not in the room. Um, and then up at the end of the day, you just got to build that rapport, right? You got to find what's the strings to leverage where you can engage that person in personal conversations sometimes.
Well, the typical problem with technology is that the person who gets the benefit from it has influence, but almost zero. No one works for them.
Mm.
No real organizational power.
In some cases, right? But in the world that I work in terms of cloud infrastructure, data analytics, AI, these are, senior directors and VPs are charged with building out that next generation of data analytic, modern cloud, right, architectures. And so there is a personal vested interest to make projects they're associated with very successful, so that they're the ones that can say, "Hey, we moved these KPIs. We enabled that end consumer of the data or of the analytic, the insight, forward. We were able to now innovate our product roadmap because we're no longer encumbered by the limitations of on-prem infrastructure." So that's very much the case with a client where they haven't been able to innovate their product roadmap in 2 years. And now that we're, getting them to the cloud, all of a sudden their product management team's coming and say, "Hey, can we do this? Is it possible to do that?" And we can say yes to those things. Our champion is the one who's enabled that. So he really put his name on this project and took ownership of driving this forward to deliver value within the organization and get that recognition.
And what skill do you wish you had or you wish you were better at that would get you to the next level?
That's a great question. So I'm constantly working on my executive communication, right? I've worked with a lot of VP, SVP, CIOs, very high level executives, and I built some great relationships there, but always working to improve my executive communication, whether it be that that really succinct email that captures their attention, or on that 30-minute executive alignment call, making sure I'm, again, being succinct and polished. I think the second part is, I'm actually enrolled in a strategic sales management class in a couple of weeks. And, how do I elevate to be seen as a potential leader for in a management? I've always been an individual contributor and loved it, but wouldn't mind challenging myself in that way.
And because I got to believe, because I sold enterprise software my whole career,
Yeah.
and you kind of knew what the big boys were going to do,
Mm.
especially if you were taking seven figures out of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to end run you and go to the CEO as soon as they find out
Yeah.
they lost the deal. How did you either prevent that or manage it?
I think it needs to be a two-pronged approach to that. Actually, maybe three. Well, again, we talked about customer obsessed, right? And so being customer obsessed and being empathetic. So building those relationships. But it's one is maintaining technical scope and strong technical execution so that your product is viewed as bulletproof, right? Don't let them poke holes in the technical solution. But most importantly, especially when you're talking about dealing with the 800-pound gorillas, I've competed against IBM when I was at a 100-person company and won, and things like that, is business value. Business value, business value. If you can't clearly articulate and hopefully quantify the business value of your solution, the big boys can say, "Oh, we'll take that. We'll give you a 100% discount on that product because you're going to buy, $20 million of this other product of ours," right? And they'll just undercut you. But if you're able to say, "Well, this is how our solution uniquely solves this problem, and these are the business outcomes that you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, have agreed will be the outcome of this solution." Now you're defending your position from a position of strength versus saying, "Well, look, our feeds are really fast," right? So it's got to be focused on business value.
And help me with your product. IT is the decision maker or line of business users?
It can be both. We work with organizations. So we have 5,000 customers globally. I work with sort of Fortune 100 enterprises. And I work in certain projects where, you're working with a line of business for a specific business use case. Like, we need to introduce alternative data into quantitative research. And you're working with the quants, right? The quant analysts and the quant researchers. And that's the line of business. But there's other initiatives and many initiatives where the data analytics team, the data science organization, the data engineering team are part of a center of excellence or a central IT organization, data management organization. And they are responsible for building out the architecture and the capabilities that support their line of business for those solutions. So you may start, and I oftentimes do start with IT as it's sort of traditionally viewed, working with data engineering leadership, data science leadership, enterprise architecture leadership, making sure that they understand how our technology and how our solution fits into their infrastructure and aligns with the business needs and the required capabilities that they need to deliver. And then you have that trust and alignment and say, okay, let's how are we going to quantify this? Right? What are the outcomes here? Let's talk to the business. And now they have that sort of excitement to bring their business counterparts in. The final proposal is going to touch all sort of both sides.
Yeah. Well, let's say I tap you and give you all the wisdom, or you read a book, or you have a coach or whatever, and now you can talk to the C-suite the way you could at Davos or some executive briefing.
That'd be cool.
Right? How would you sell differently?
I'm not sure if it's the motion, but the language used, right? And making sure that I am using language that, you get on a call with a chief data officer, and the way that they speak about their business
Sure,
and their
of course.
corporate initiatives is just, at a higher level and quite polished. And I think I would just aim to be able to conduct myself in that way every and all conversations.
Well, there are those people that want to talk data, speeds and feeds, integration, differentiators, where's it going, things like that. But the people paying for that have no idea what that means, nor care, nor have any interest in seeing it. How would you talk to them? Because they're the ones that are, because it's probably going to go to the board in some cases.
Right. Yeah.
And somebody at the board meeting has to say, why are we doing this? And with you.
Exactly. So that's, again, business value. How does your solution align not only to the immediate project, but then when you're speaking with a chief data officer, chief digital officer, CIO, CFO, what does it mean when you're taking a look at their annual reports and the strategic initiatives that they're outlining to the board and to the market, and how can you very clearly align your solution to those specific initiatives with specifics, right? With like, I know you've been talking about driving synergies based off of your recent merger. This is how our technology addresses that, as an example, and being able to succinctly but with detail make that connection for them. And then they go, oh, that means something to me now. Right. Let's dig into that.
And when you see other reps, either competitors at your company, friends, family, whatever, don't need names, what do you wish you could just whisper in their ear or put it on a fortune cookie to save them years of struggle that you see them doing wrong, but they're not asking for your opinion?
Um, you know, I look to collaborate with, and I look for sort of mentors, if you will, of other sales reps who have a level of polish, a level of hustle. They're outworking the rest of their team, and folks who do establish and are known for establishing tremendous champions and executive sponsors. And that's where I try to emulate others in my field. So those would be the characteristics. Like, how do you have polish in what you're doing, right? You're selling millions of dollars worth of technology. You can't come across as, and this is no offense to the profession, like a used car salesman who's just going to say, hey, here's the car, go for a drive, right? You need to be able to carry yourself with a level of polish in everything that you do, from written communication to verbal to your presentations. And then, just outworking, are you up early? Are you doing your research? Are you up late? It's not about burning the candle at both ends, but are you putting in the time to really make sure that you come prepared? I do a lot of prep with my team for meetings. So are you prepping your team again so that they can play their role in a conversation or in a presentation, things like that?
And what gave you this empathy? Was it an epiphany? Was it a skill? Was it something you emulated?
I believe that formalizing it as the empathetic sale came through conversations with a mentor and others. I've always been very service oriented in my sales approach. But early in my career, it was about, this is what I've done for you. Look what I've done for you, or let me tell you about my company. And listening and watching and observing and getting feedback, right? If you don't take that feedback, if you go into those annual reviews or one-on-ones over dinner or whatever with your leadership, and you go into those with earmuffs and you're like, I know better, you're never going to grow. So,
Right.
I just believe in continuous improvement, and I'm not perfect by any means, but I do strive to continue to take feedback in a constructive way so that there's a reason why someone's telling you something. When someone gives you feedback, constructive criticism, right? I take it as that they care in helping me get better. So let me take the care in listening and applying it to both my life and my profession.
That's it. Most people get defensive and try and explain why the other person's wrong.
Yeah. And I've been guilty of getting defensive.
And that's
right?
natural. Absolutely
right.
natural.
But
not smart, but it's natural.
Right. I've said that a couple of times. There's a younger Alejandro out there in a different paradigm who would get really frustrated with something, right? Or get defensive. And I'm glad to at least receive a little bit of feedback from colleagues and friends that, hey, continuous improvement is something you've actually executed on.
Yeah, cool. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go
Thank
to
you so
connect
much.
and follow you?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Alejandro Quiroga. I'm at Databricks. If you want to shoot me an email, you can shoot me an email at aq@databricks.com. I made my email a lot easier than spelling my name. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn for sure. Stay out of the Twitter fray, but you know, thank you so much for having me on. I've been listening to the show for a long time. Your opening is something I used to play to help just pump me up before meetings sometimes. So thanks so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.